There is just something primal and real about being an aggro player. Many players throughout Magic's history have loved the playstyle, but in Commander the archetype just doesn't get as big. Players have more life, so they have much more time to play against the aggro players. Also, many groups don't like it when players are being focused. So what can we do to make aggro a thing? I hope your coffee is warm or really cold. Today we're building an aggro deck. We'll learn how to build any one and we'll go into 3 specific decks. So subscribe for more videos like these if you like them. Aggro decks are really different from themes like sacrifice or tokens, and that is because an aggro deck can be a token deck too. An aggro deck is any deck that's aggressive enough to make a dent in the commander landscape. This is harder to do because you're against 3 opponents with 40 life each, so you need to either be really aggro or have at least a slight lean towards mid-range. But let's see what we can do today to make that a real thing, a real aggro deck. In my mind, aggro decks stand with these other archetypes, which are combo decks, control decks, synergy decks, which are more about the theme of the commander, mid-range decks or maybe good stuff decks are sort of the same, and sometimes I feel like ramp is a sort of deck on its own, which is just green, play a bunch of lands, play big stuff. So then you have aggro. So any deck can be an aggro deck, but you do need to have a certain focus, I feel, in order to be an aggro deck, on killing your opponents quickly. Might sound logical, but many decks have been marked as aggro decks which really aren't about killing your opponents quickly. They are about perhaps attacking, but you want to gain value through attacking. No, we're not here to attack for value, we are here to attack to destroy our opponents. So, in which colors are aggro decks? Primarily, aggro is in red. Very obviously, it is because 87% of decks that are aggro are also red. 63 in comparison percent of those decks are white. So Boros is really the main core of aggro decks, but black decks are close behind with 56. I would say that is sort of secondary to the primary Boros. Then tertiary, we have green with 30% and blue with only 19%. So blue really isn't aggro, and this is something we might have thought about before. In the decks that we will be talking about today, because we will be covering 3 whole decks that I made for this video, we have 3 red pips, we have 2 black pips, and then 1 blue and 1 green. A little bit weird that there is no white, as it was so primary to the archetype, but that is because I feel like the white decks are often very token-like, and we just did those. But you could make those token decks into a more aggressive deck. Thing is, I feel like that is more of a theme than really aggro or combo decks are, even though it's on a different level. So what does each color do? Well, red is the primary color, and for very good reason, because red is almost always the most aggressive color. It deals direct damage, it is hedonistic in its playstyle, and it can be very impulsive with its card draw, that it offsets aggro's weakness of not having enough fuel. White is also often in these aggro decks, often together with red and black in Mardu. That is because white is a great color for going white. Having many creatures is one way to become aggressive, but in my opinion this is a bit of a faux reason for being aggressive, because being a token deck is different from being really aggro. And often white decks just miss that little bit of haste or reach that other colors give them. Black is here often with Mardu too. It adds a form of planning that pushes red slightly towards mid-range when added. It's also great at draining life or dealing direct damage in other ways, but that often leans into becoming a combo deck. Green is all about big creatures, of course, though that often pushes it into being more of a ramp deck, which I feel is sort of different from being an aggro deck. It is a firmly mid-range color, but together with black it can often bring really big creatures or some tribal options. Blue really isn't that aggro. When it is used in an aggro deck, it is often bringing in unblockable or other evasion like flying. Really, it's not often necessary in aggro decks though. It pushes decks to being more controlling more than anything. Thematically, aggro decks are often with warriors or sometimes beasts, maybe some fire or explosions, but as an aggro deck is more of an archetypal archetype, it really is a little bit vague. There aren't really that many themes that really fit only for aggro decks. Many of these things also go with typal decks or stuff like that. So what to expect for the rest of this video? We will go by the purpose and strengths of aggro decks first, then some staples and what options you have for your commanders, and 3 of them, as I said before, I have turned into decks and I will recommend them. Then we end with some gameplay tips, but I think the most fun part will be in the beginning, as always. So let's go. Before we really start with the strengths and weaknesses of a theme, we need to talk about the purpose of it. The purpose of aggro decks is very simple. It is to speed up games and force other decks in your playgroups to be more efficient. The thing is, without aggro, many decks can do whatever they want for so many turns that it really changes the way Commander works. This is also, I think, why people don't really like aggro decks in Commander. But it can be very fun for a playgroup to have at least a little bit of aggro, because it forces you to play better, a little bit more quickly, and also, like I said, very efficient. Now the strengths of aggro decks are that they can deal a lot of damage very fast, they can snowball a game after getting ahead, which will often grant them more value, which is okay because it is done because you are damaging your opponents, and it is an archetype that really helps you to pressure the strongest players. This is also why I think aggro can actually be good for Commander. It can now also sometimes make it more casual, weirdly enough. That is because aggro decks can help you to target the strongest players again. So that means that the strongest players will also leave a bit of chance for the weaker players to pick up some scraps. The weaknesses of aggro decks are that they have a very hard time getting back into games after getting board wiped or something like that. They are very bad often at drawing cards, and they are very bad at ramping because green also isn't here often. The mindset you should apply to aggro decks is that you should attack quickly, you should seize the advantage when you have it, and try to get enough advantage to get into your next position to attack. Usually you need to get that advantage to draw more cards, but in this case you really need to get ready to attack again, because you need to focus some people down. Or, if that is not done in your playgroup, you can focus the strongest person so that they don't get away too hard and they need to spend some resources at least blocking you. Now in Commander there are some types of aggro commanders. The main rules for aggro commanders are that they get value from attacking. This is true for 73% of those decks. They can strengthen your board, like giving them more power or something like that. That is true for 34% of aggro commanders. They can deal damage on their own, which is true for 19% of aggro commanders. They can target your creature sometimes, which really isn't often the case. Or they could do something with either poison/infect or extra combats, which of course also helps you attack more. But there's also the option to play a Voltron deck, which I think is a theme on its own and is probably a sort of typal deck if you want to play it in an aggro way, which is why I won't cover it today. So what any aggro deck needs, the core of the deck, is card draw for one. You need ramp like any deck, you need removal and board wipes, which is very normal, but then also you will need something that deals a lot of damage. It can be through attacking or could be through direct damage. You need value creators that create value from dealing damage or attacking, for example. You need a very high creature rate often, because that is a way to attack. If you are going that route, then you need to have some ways to strengthen your creatures too. Or you could go the reach route, which is dealing direct damage, and then you will need ways to multiply your reach. Because in Commander, multiplying is the only way to make reach really strong. It is also something that has been happening more often, so I feel like Wizards is really pushing the aggro type plan for Commander. Now let's get into the top 13 commanders in this case, because there are very many and they are very much spread, and their archetypes. Note that I won't mention every commander that you could play in aggro, because that is basically impossible. I will just dive really deeply into the commanders that add something to the archetype. But if you want to see a specific one, let me know and I could do a deck for example, on that commander. Now first of all we have Isshin, 2 heavens as 1, which is I think the most popular one. This commander is just here for creating value from attacking with double triggers. This also means that you do attack, but usually you aren't really that aggro in my mind. It is a very flexible way to work with attack triggers though, which accidentally makes Isshin a little bit more mid-range. It also gives you enough value to almost make this into a token deck, which is also I think a fun way to make this into more of an aggro deck. Winota Joiner Forces is one of the most famous ones, I think. This is a value go wide strategy where you are getting humans onto the battlefield for free. It has a very high combo potential with humans like Combat Celebrant plus Rionya, Fire Dancer for infinite combos and tokens and attacking very often. That does mean that it is a combo deck sort of, but it also does it through attacking, which is I think the only aggro way to really combo off. This is a very easy go wide focus together with the strongest humans to put into play for free, making it a sort of toolbox deck as well. Now lately we have been getting some very strong direct damage commanders like Caesar, Legion's Emperor. This is a commander that gives you value from sacrificing your dudes, going wide and dealing direct damage like I said. Here is the token focus again, and it will give you some card draw, some very high direct damage equal to the amount of creatures you have, which also helps it being aggro the most. To be able to deal direct damage equal to the amount of creatures means that you will be dealing a bunch of damage every time you start attacking. Bello, Bard of the Brambles is a very fun one, because it sort of makes it into a mid-range deck because it allows you to play any good stuff you want. Bello wants to go wide by making your big artifacts and enchantments into creatures. They will also allow you to draw whenever you are really dealing damage to your opponents, which is also value from attacking. Bello allows you to play any good stuff and then turn it into an aggro creature, so that you can turn your 4/4 sideways as you are playing your favorite enchantments or artifacts. You are also adding card draw, which is really enabling you to be some more longer lived, really pushing this into the mid-range sort of strategy for aggro. Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow, is really here for a little bit of value, but mostly for the direct damage. It has some very high combo or damage potential from being able to deal 4 to maybe 15 damage. Spreading the damage to all your opponents means that you won't really be making any one opponent angry, but do note that they really will want to stop you very badly. Still, having a ninjutsu side focus makes this deck at least synergistic, but also just a unique aggro commander. Henzie, the Toolbox Torre, I don't know, definitely is here for value, valuing off from blitzing your creatures out onto the battlefield. But also she is here for a sort of go wide toolbox by blitzing out your creatures. Henzie works with any good stuff, but forces you to play hedonistic creatures anyways. You want them to be immediately good, and you are forced to turn them into value too. Cards you blitz will replace themselves, making you slightly more mid-range, but the fact that you are so hedonistic with your creatures and need to use them right away, attack with them right away, makes this a very aggro deck. Najeela, the Blade Blossom, is again a going wide deck, where you are again working with tokens, but mostly this one's unique because of the extra combats. Najeela also strengthens your creatures after doing that. Najeela has a great focus on extra combats, being all colors also brings a lot of versatility, and Najeela can very quickly combo with infinite attacks. I know this pushes it to be a combo deck, but infinite attacks I will always allow. Xenagos, God of Revels, is I think the most primal one of this bunch. This one is just for strengthening your creatures, which I really respect. Xenagos brings a raw power. It really feels like you have the God of Wild Knights on your side when you give a creature that just entered haste and double its power. Xenagos is the epitome of Gruul, and in that it wants you to work with big powered creatures, and then he doubles that. I had to include at least one poison commander with Ixhel, Scion of Atraxa. This one also gives value. I felt like I had to include a poison infect deck, as they used to be the only real way of closing out games fast. Even though Ixhel is more of a value commander, adding value to the deck, still poison/infect is really a way of living that forces you to be aggro at least. New Samut strengthens your team really quickly. Max speed could also give you some value from other cards that have max speed. Samut is all about going wide for your team and granting them a lot of power. 4 is a lot. She is not just a token strategy though, because she also makes your spells cheaper, allowing you to storm off in that way. It also adds some versatility, really pushing it a slight bit toward mid-range, but if you are using her for that power, I feel like you are definitely hard into the aggro mindset. Marchesa, the Black Rose's ability allows you or forces you to attack the strong and then recur those creatures if they die from battling the strongest player. Marchesa adds a sense of attacking the strongest player that is unparalleled, I would say. And many playgroups need a strong Marchesa player in their life, because they allow the strongest player to become weakened as they need to defend. This is, I think, the best commander I could tell you about if you have a playgroup that really doesn't want to be focused down. Do note that focusing down shouldn't be bad, but you should maybe talk about it, as it is sort of frowned upon sometimes. This one is just direct damage. It's Ojer Axonil, the Deepest Might. I feel like Red is getting very good at dealing direct damage lately. I love that Wizards is doing this to Red, giving it the opportunity to get really wild with doubling damage and at least giving it some sense of identity in Commander. Axonil is, I think, the best example of this, as it allows you to turn 1 damage into 4 right away, but also could turn it into even more if you get Ojer Axonil to become stronger themselves. Now for this last one, it was between Azula and Feather, but I chose Firelord Azula because honestly, replacing one of Boros' few strong suits is such a Grixis Azula thing to do that I had to give it to her for flavor. This new commander is, I feel like, the best new aggressive spellslinger commander, and it is a very famous one too. So let's get into each of the 3 decks that I have chosen to be the most interesting, or at least the most aggro, because the first one is Ojer Axonil, the Deepest Might. I chose this one because it is a pure direct damage deck, as Red should be, and I think this really encapsulates the way aggro should be. The lore of Ojer Axonil is that it is one of the deep gods from the core of Ixhel. He's believed to be a child of Chimil, a primordial sun god, and Axonil has the power to shapeshift like any other core gods, and was drawn to the core by the sounds of a whispering war, and successfully imprisoned the bad god Axonil, which should make him cool enough for you and for me. His mechanical game plan is to get pingers out to the battlefield, play your commander, and then boost those pings to make them into 4 or even more damage. Now for deck parts for this deck, I would say, like always, you have 5 board wipes, 10 card draw, 10 ramp, and 5 removal at least. Then specifically, I went with a little bit fewer lands. I went with 32 lands. Then at least 12 reach cards, of which I have 22, so things that deal damage. And then there I have 8 non-creature reach cards, which trigger whenever you play something non-creature or maybe instants or sorceries. And then I also have 23 instants and sorceries accidentally. I don't think you need that many necessarily, but you do need a bulk of them. And then 9 cards are here just to give Axonil more power, so that you can deal even more damage per card that you play. The strongest cards are Fairy in Confluence because it allows you to deal your choice of 4, 8 or 12 damage to each creature. Also could destroy some artifacts. Grape Shot because it deals 4 damage on a Storm sorcery. And then for new cards, I think Virtue of Courage is very good. It deals 4 damage to a target and then allows you to draw your whole deck basically. And Urabrask because it allows you to at first deal 4 damage to an opponent whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, also gaining you a red mana, and eventually you will get to wipe the board and basically only your opponent's boards, while also stealing their instants and sorceries, which is just salt to injury. What makes this deck unique is its very hard focus on just burst direct damage that gives it a slight control ability as well. The strengths are that it has a very high reach potential, a lot of ways to remove creatures through damage, and it is very, very fast. I think the fastest of them all. Its weaknesses are that it burns out really quickly. It needs ramp badly, but it is in mono red, so you need a lot of artifact ramp. And card draw is very hard to do here. Hence the burning out quickly, because you need a bulk of many themes, and red isn't the greatest at drawing cards anyways. The next one I have looked up for this. It's Henzie, the Toolbox Torre actually. This type of commander is basically Gruul, but with, as the name betrays, a toolbox aspect, where you can have huge creatures out for a limited time. Perfect aggro, trading the future for the now. Her lore is that she is a Riveteer member who is versatile and resourceful. Henzie, the name Toolbox. She values loyalty, getting the job done no matter what, and that's it. That's simple. Her ability shows her not wasting any time contracting strong workers, so she's really a leader for the Riveteer worker group. Her mechanical game plan is to ramp out, play your commander, preferably multiple times, and then sacrifice your commander, perhaps if you need to play very big creatures very quickly. For deck parts, it is slightly different in that you have the normal amount of lands, 38 I would say, but specifically you also need many big creatures. You can use this again as a toolbox so they can do double duty. We need cards that give you value for creatures dying, or maybe cards that give you value for you sacrificing them on your own terms. And then you need a little bit of recursion, which will be good because you will be putting many big cards into the graveyard, which you can then get back for free. One way that is very strong to do this is Junji, a big dragon that also allows you to return 2 non-dragons to the battlefield when it dies. Of course it will die very quickly after using it with your commander. Protean Hulk is also very good because it is allowing you to really get to toolbox your whole deck. Seed Guide Ash also is good because it allows you to ramp for 3 for just 4 mana or less. Ilhark is a newer card that allows you also to put a creature onto the battlefield for real after it attacks this turn. And Riveteer's Ascendancy is very good for this commander, believe it or not, returning a creature per turn, because you will definitely be sacrificing at least something every turn. What makes this deck unique is that the deck will be, I think, the fastest to get very big creatures out onto the battlefield and have them attack on the same turn. The strengths of this deck are its resilience, because your creatures die to draw your cards, which means that board wipes or removal will hurt you less than other aggro decks get hurt by it. You also cheat some mana, reducing cost by 1, 2 or 3 mana per spell is sometimes absurd. And giving everything haste means you never have to wait a turn to impact the board with your big creatures. Its weaknesses are, for example, Graveyard Hate, because you need those cards in your graveyard sometimes, but also need the ability to draw more cards, which might stall you out if you don't get to do that. It is very dependent on your commander, even though it is very cheap and you want to build it around playing your commander multiple times. The deck almost does nothing without Henzie on the battlefield. So either you need to put more ramp in if you have a lot of removal in your playgroup, or you need to be very mindful of playing Henzie at the right time. It can also be even weaker than usually against fog effects. Since you rely on combat damage, a wild timed Teferi's protection can waste your entire turn. And your creature still dies, so that is even harder to get through. And the third interesting commander is Firelord Azula. This is an aggro commander with a Spellslinger side that only works during combat. The lore and identity you might know from the series, but Princess Azula is a strategic, firebending master who was shortly Firelord when her father became Phoenix King. Her flames are blue because they are hotter than usual, and her personality cracked after learning that she wasn't just meant to rule and she could be challenged by her older brother Zuko, which seemed to hurt even more than her friends betraying her. Her plan is to play Azula, attack, and then double your spells for value or damage, preferably. The deck parts are mostly like always, but then you add some copying cards that copy the copies perhaps. You need to have enough instants or flash cards or ways to give your creatures flash. So I have some ways at least to give other creatures flash. And then you will need enough reach again and some doubling power, which can be very good here because doubling is always very good. The strongest cards here are cards like Torrential Gearhulk, which allow you to copy cards from your graveyard or hand, something like that. In this case you will get to copy 2 cards, then you get 2 6/6s, and you will copy both the cards that you are copying for 4 cards, making a 6 for 1. Also 1000 Year Storm, because this will allow you to storm for real. Now newer cards are High Fate Trickster, which grants flash and also is a flash creature, so you can get 2 creatures with flying with 4 power, which is already a lot. Twinning Staff, or cards like it, turning double into triple, which is of course even better. Or cards like Bulk Up, because doubling Azula's power twice is already 16 damage. Now what makes this unique is it's sort of being between dealing a bunch of commander damage and dealing damage through reach, but also allowing you to double any spells you use while attacking. So also it will allow you to double flash creatures, for example, for some maybe crazy combos while forcing you to attack. The strengths of this deck are its explosiveness, because you can go from an empty board to winning in a single combat step. By copying the right buffs or direct damage spells, you really need to plan ahead, which might not feel like something aggro does, but definitely is something aggro should do. Another strength is its versatility, because Grixis will allow you to tutor for the exact answer you need, and then you can copy it. Its weaknesses though are that it is very vulnerable during combat, because you have to attack with your commander to get value, and if she dies in combat your engine will break. It is also very mana hungry. I mean, you have some firebending, but you need a lot of mana to cast Azula, protect her, and cast the spells you want to copy. So, how do you choose your aggro deck's commander? Now, first of all, ask yourself, do you like to double stuff and double it again? If you want to see 2 creatures turn into 4, then 8, then 16, choose a Go White token commander. But if you like to double damage, there's something for you too. And if you don't or haven't seen it yet, you need to double some stuff at least to be an aggro commander, it feels like. Now, if you like subtraction, perhaps you want to see life totals drop directly without worrying about blockers. Perhaps you should choose a burn or direct damage commander like Ojer or Axonil, or perhaps Yuriko, which can be at least a little bit direct because it needs you to have some unblockable stuff and stuff like that. Now, perhaps you like to do some heavy lifting in a green-like deck, then you should maybe slam some giant threats onto the table to choose a Stompy or Blitz commander like Henzie, or a Stompy commander, like I said, like Xenagos, which is also very fun. Now, how do you win in a deck like this? Well, I think you have 4 ways. The first one is to overrun. Cards that give unblockable, flying, trample, stuff like that will allow you to win with your small army and making it into a big one. You also can win with burn. Many reach cards will help you to win the game because your opponents can't block against them, of course. Or you could do something that will be a sort of one-shot strategy, like having a very strong commander, or perhaps having poison / toxic. Some combos here that I like in aggro are stuff that will allow you to make infinite combats happen. This is of course okay, but I wouldn't go too hard into combo in this video because I feel like combo decks are their own type of thing. Now I do have some playstyle tips for you. First of all, the mulligan is the most important turn. It isn't really a turn, but you really cannot keep a slow hand. If you aren't doing something on turn 2, mulligan, because you need to be the threat immediately and you need to turn that into your mid-game advantage at least. You shouldn't overextend though, this is the golden rule. If you have enough power on board to kill a threat or to be at least dangerous, don't cast the last creature in your hand. Save it for after your board is wiped eventually. Now, player removal is still the best removal, if you can, and don't feel too bad about it. If a player is playing, for example, a combo deck or a very heavy control deck, focus them first. Don't spread the damage around to be nice. A player at 1 life can still cast a Cyclonic Rift or something. A player at 0 life cannot do that. Also, make them have it. Don't be afraid to attack into open mana. I know that this seems like a dumb move, but if you wait because you are scared of a removal spell, you are giving them time to draw it. So force them to use their resources. This is also why I think it's sometimes okay to target the strongest players. Now, aggro isn't just about turning cards sideways. It is about setting the clock. It's about being the player that forces the rest of the table to be honest with their decks. If they got greedy with their mana base, punish them. If they didn't run interaction, run them over. Go out there, keep your curve low, your coffee warm or very, very cold, and I will see you in the next one. Please subscribe, and I want to thank you a lot for watching. Bye.